What she was about to discover at the bottom of a drained dam would revolutionize green energy forever and make her the most hunted woman in the energy industry. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The rolling hills of Clearwater Valley stretched endlessly under the Montana sky, their gentle slopes dotted with ponderosa pines and weathered rock. Formations that spoke of generations who had witnessed the land's transformation. The small rural community of just over 1,500 residents had maintained its quiet rhythm for decades, where everyone knew their neighbors and change came slowly if at all. Olivia Reynolds had never expected to own property here or anywhere for that matter. At 34, she was drowning in debt from her 9-year-old daughter Lily's ongoing treatment for juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. Working double shifts as an emergency room nurse at Riverside General Hospital while trying to maintain some semblance of stability for her bright, resilient child. Divorce 3 years earlier had left them financially devastated, and Olivia had been seriously considering bankruptcy when the letter arrived. Uncle Thomas passed away last month, the lawyer's formal correspondence had stated. As his only surviving relative, you have inherited the Clearwater Dam property and its 53 acres in Clearwater Valley, Montana. Olivia had stared at the letter for a full 5 minutes, reading and rereading the words as if they might change or disappear. She had only met Thomas Reynolds twice, once at a family reunion when she was 10 and again at her father's funeral 7 years ago. Thomas had been a stern private man in his 70s who spoke little and seemed to carry secrets in his sharp blue eyes. Olivia remembered him as someone who listened more than he talked, always observing with an intensity that made even adults uncomfortable. The inheritance seemed like a miracle wrapped in complications. The dam property came with no mortgage but also with decades of deferred maintenance, property taxes Olivia couldn't afford, and the daunting prospect of uprooting Lily from the only community she'd ever known. Riverside offered Olivia steady employment and Lily access to the medical specialists who managed her arthritis. Moving to rural Montana meant leaving behind everything familiar for the unknown. But the mounting bills and the constant stress of city life had taken their toll. Their cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of Riverside felt more like a prison than a home. Thin walls that carried their neighbors, arguments and sirens that punctuated Lily's sleep throughout the night. The medical insurance that Olivia had fought so hard to maintain still left them with copays and deductibles that consumed most of her paycheck. Lily's medications, physical therapy, and regular rheumatologist visits created a monthly expense that forced impossible choices. Between medical necessities and basic needs like groceries and utilities, Lily, despite her medical challenges, had always been drawn to nature and open spaces. During their rare weekend trips outside the city, she collected rocks, photographed wildlife with Olivia's old phone, and dreamed of having a dog. Impossible. In their apartment with its strict no pets policy and barely enough space for their existing furniture. Maybe we could try it for this summer, Olivia had suggested one evening as they sat at their tiny kitchen table reviewing Uncle Thomas's inheritance paperwork together. See how it feels, meet the neighbors, figure out what the property is worth. Lily's eyes had lit up with excitement, tempered by practical concern that shouldn't have existed in someone so young. What about my doctors and your job? Dr. Williams said there are good specialists in Bozeman. About an hour away, Olivia replied, having already spent hours researching medical care in the area. I can find nursing work anywhere. The question is whether you want to try something completely different. Can we really have a dog? Lily had asked with the hope that only 9-year-olds can summon for life-changing possibilities. If we can make it work, yes, we can have a dog. The decision had been made with the kind of desperate optimism that comes from having limited options and unlimited determination. Olivia gave notice at the hospital, arranged for Lily's medical records to be transferred, and used her entire savings account to rent a U-Haul truck for their modest possessions. The $2,340 she had accumulated over 3 years of cutting every possible expense would have to cover the move, first month's utilities, and whatever emergency repairs the dam property might require. The 4-hour drive from Riverside to Clearwater Valley took them through Montana's changing landscape, from urban sprawl to suburban developments to rolling farmland that seemed untouched by time. Lily pressed her face against the passenger window, documenting their journey with phone photos of cattle, horses, and fields that stretched to the horizon. "Mom, look at all the space," she said with wonder as they crested a hill and saw the valley spread below them. "There's nobody else around for miles." "That's going to be an adjustment," Olivia replied, feeling her own mixture of excitement and terror as she contemplated the isolation that would soon become their reality. The Reynolds Dam property sat at the end of a gravel lane that wound through mature pine trees and overgrown meadows where wildflowers had reclaimed the land. The caretaker's house, a modest 2-story wooden structure, painted a faded blue with white trim, showed its age and sagging front steps and weathered siding, but the bones were solid. A wide front porch wrapped around 2 sides of the house, offering views of the valley that stretched toward distant mountains. The property included several outbuildings, a large equipment shed that looked surprisingly well maintained, a smaller structure that might have been a workshop, and what appeared to be the remains of a hydroelectric control station from decades past. But the centerpiece of the property was the dam itself, a concrete structure about 30 feet high that spanned a narrow section of the Clearwater River, creating what had once been a substantial reservoir. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "It's bigger than our apartment," Lily observed as they pulled into the circular driveway, her voice carrying awe at the sheer scale of space they now apparently owned. "Everything's bigger than our apartment," Olivia replied, parking the U-Haul truck beside a garden area where someone had clearly spent considerable effort on landscaping that was now beginning to return to wildness. The dam itself, however, was clearly in a state of disrepair. A large crack ran down one side of the concrete face, and the reservoir behind it had drained to less than half its original capacity, creating a muddy shoreline where water had once reached. Signs warning of danger structural damage were posted at regular intervals along the top of the dam. The interior of the caretaker's house revealed decades of careful maintenance, mixed with the outdated decor of someone who had stopped updating his surroundings sometime in the 1980s. Wood paneling covered most surfaces. The kitchen appliances were harvest gold, and the furniture carried the solid, unfashionable weight of pieces built to last generations. But everything was clean, organized, and functional in ways that suggested Thomas had maintained his home with the same methodical care he had apparently applied to every aspect of his life, except the dam itself. The house felt welcoming in ways their city apartment never had. High ceilings, hardwood floors, and windows that actually opened to let in fresh air created a sense of space and possibility that Olivia hadn't experienced since childhood. The living room featured a stone fireplace surrounded by built-in bookshelves filled with volumes on engineering, local history, and what appeared to be an extensive collection of technical manuals and patent documentation. Lily immediately claimed a bedroom on the 2nd floor that overlooked the valley, its windows providing a panoramic view of rolling hills and distant forests. The room was decorated with the kind of careful neutrality that suggested Thomas had hoped someday to have children in his home, even though that dream had never materialized. Olivia chose Thomas's former room, which featured a sitting area with comfortable chairs, positioned to catch the morning sun, and French doors that opened onto the wraparound porch. The closet still contained some of Thomas's clothing, practical shirts, sturdy jeans, and a few pieces that suggested he had once dressed for special occasions that no longer came. Their first week in Clearwater Valley provided a crash course in rural living and small-town social dynamics. The nearest grocery store was 20 minutes away in the village center, housed in a building that had clearly served the community for generations. Jackson's General Store carried everything from groceries to hardware supplies to fishing gear, operating with the kind of efficiency that only comes from decades of serving the same customers with similar needs. Sarah Jackson, the store's owner, whose family had run the business for 4 generations, greeted Olivia's appearance as Thomas's mysterious heir with polite curiosity and careful observation, the kind of neutral friendliness that small communities use to gather information about newcomers. Thomas kept to himself mostly, Sarah explained as she rang up Olivia's groceries, her tone carrying the neutral friendliness that small communities use to gather information about newcomers. Nice enough man, but private. Didn't socialize much. After his work at the dam ended. I didn't know he worked at the dam, Olivia replied, realizing how little she knew about the man whose property she'd inherited and whose carefully preserved life she was now somehow responsible for continuing. Oh yes, he was the lead engineer. Brilliant man by all accounts. Worked for Western Power for nearly 30 years before they decommissioned the dam in the early 1990s. When the company abandoned the project, they sold him the property for a fraction of its value. Some said it was hush money. Hush money? Olivia asked, suddenly alert to the possibility that her inheritance might be more complicated than she'd initially thought. Sarah lowered her voice slightly. There were rumors about Thomas's work, experimental designs, revolutionary concepts, that the company decided were too advanced or too expensive to implement. Some folks say Thomas refused to hand over his research when the project was shut down. Nobody knows for sure, but he became even more reclusive after that. The information painted Thomas's solitary life in a more intriguing light. Olivia began to understand why her uncle had seemed so reserved during their brief encounters. He'd spent most of his later adult life alone, shaped by professional disappointments that had occurred when she was barely a teenager. 30 years, Olivia repeated, trying to imagine the kind of determination required to maintain a property and a life through that much solitude. He was devoted to his work, Sarah continued, her voice carrying the respect that small communities reserve for those who demonstrate unwavering loyalty. Every day, he'd walk the dam, checking for problems, making notes. Even after the power company stopped maintaining it, even when they told him it was a lost cause. Never missed a day, even when his arthritis got bad and walking was difficult. The practical challenges of rural living quickly became apparent as Olivia and Lily settled into their new routine. The well water had a metallic taste that required a filtration system Olivia couldn't afford. The electrical wiring was old enough to make appliances flicker unexpectedly, particularly when the refrigerator cycled on. The heating system relied on a propane furnace that would require expensive fuel delivery before winter, an expense that Olivia tried not to calculate too precisely. The internet connection was spotty at best, making it difficult for Olivia to research employment opportunities, or for Lily to maintain contact with friends in Riverside. Cell phone coverage required positioning herself near specific windows, and the landline telephone in Thomas's kitchen operated with the kind of rotary dial that Lily had only seen in movies. But Lily thrived in ways that surprised them both. Her joint pain seemed less severe with the reduced stress and increased physical activity of exploring their property. Ceased the constant worry about neighborhood safety that had characterized their Riverside life simply didn't exist here. Lily could walk outside without Olivia's supervision, explore the outbuildings, and spend hours watching birds and wildlife that had been completely absent from their urban environment. She helped Olivia plant a small vegetable garden in the area where Thomas had apparently maintained flowers, learning to distinguish between weeds and the perennial plants that returned each spring. She discovered a collection of field guides in Thomas's bookshelves, and began teaching herself to identify birds, trees, and wildflowers that surrounded their property. Most importantly, she made friends with the Jackson family's border collie during trips to the grocery store, demonstrating the kind of natural comfort with animals that Olivia had never had the opportunity to nurture in their previous living situation. Mrs. Jackson said there might be a puppy available from their neighbor's dog in a few weeks. Lily reported after one such visit, her attempt to advance their dog acquisition plans, only slightly more subtle than her usual direct approach. She said to ask you about it, and that they'd make sure we got one that's good with kids. Olivia smiled at her daughter's transparent campaign. Let's get through our first month here before we add a puppy to the situation. We still have a lot to figure out about taking care of ourselves. The breakthrough in their exploration of Thomas's property came during their second week, when a thunderstorm knocked out power and left them searching for candles and flashlights in unfamiliar cabinets and closets. Lily discovered a box of emergency supplies in the upstairs linen closet, along with a handwritten note in Thomas's careful script that mentioned important technical documents in the dam vault for whoever comes after me. Mom, I think Uncle Thomas left us a message, Lily announced, showing Olivia the note written on stationery that bore Thomas's name and address. What kind of message? Olivia asked, examining the careful handwriting that indicated Thomas had deliberately left instructions for whoever might eventually inherit his home. The note was brief but specific. Critical hydroelectric patents and research materials are preserved in the lower vault. These documents should be reviewed by someone who will understand their technical significance. Contact Professor Daniel Mitchell at Montana State University if questions arise about their importance. Olivia considered the possibility that Thomas had left documentation about property boundaries, water rights, or other issues that new property owners should understand. Rural properties often came with complications that weren't immediately obvious. Thomas's methodical nature suggested he would have wanted to provide guidance for his successor. Maybe there's information about the dam or legal stuff about the water rights, Olivia mused, though the mention of patents and technical significance suggested something more complex than simple property documentation. Can we look now? Lily asked with the curiosity that had characterized her approach to their new environment. Olivia examined the flashlights they'd found, noting the fresh batteries and the fact that Thomas had apparently maintained emergency supplies with the same careful attention he'd given everything else. Right, she decided. Let's see what Uncle Thomas wanted us to find. The summer storm had intensified, rain hammering against the roof of Thomas's house as Olivia and Lily made their way toward the dam in raincoats and rubber boots, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Lightning illuminated the valley in brief electric flashes, revealing the cracked concrete face of the dam looming before them like a monument to forgotten ambitions. Are you sure we should be doing this tonight? Lily asked, her voice barely audible above the storm. Despite her concern, her eyes sparkled with excitement at the prospect of uncovering secrets in the rain. The power might be out for days. Olivia replied, scanning the base of the dam where Thomas's note had indicated the vault entrance would be located. And I'm too curious to wait. What had once been the reservoir behind the dam was now a muddy depression, filled with shallow water and exposed shoreline. The crack in the dam's face had clearly been leaking for years, gradually draining what had once been a substantial body of water. The receding waterline had exposed sections of the dam's base that would normally have been submerged, including what appeared to be a metal door set into the concrete foundation. Mom, look! Lily pointed toward the exposed metal door, her flashlight beam dancing across its surface. Is that it? The door was industrial-grade steel with a heavy locking mechanism that appeared surprisingly well-maintained considering its location. Unlike the weathered concrete surrounding it, the door showed signs of regular care, its surface free from rust, its hinges recently oiled. Thomas must have accessed this regularly, Olivia observed, examining the sophisticated lock. But how? Do we get in? Lily was already searching the area around the door, her flashlight methodically scanning the muddy ground. Maybe he left a key somewhere, like people do with hide keys? The suggestion seemed almost too simple, but as Olivia joined the search, she noticed a small metal box embedded in the concrete about 3 feet from the door. The box was nearly invisible, painted to match the surrounding surface, with only a slight seam indicating its presence. "Good eye, Lily," Olivia said, examining the box more closely. It had no visible lock or handle, but when she pressed against one side, it clicked and swung open to reveal a single key and another note in Thomas's handwriting. "The future is underwater." Olivia frowned at the cryptic message, but the key fit perfectly into the vault door's lock. It turned with surprising ease, as if the mechanism had been regularly maintained despite its exposure to the elements. The heavy door swung open to reveal a narrow passageway leading into the base of the dam. "Stay behind me," Olivia instructed, stepping cautiously into the corridor. The passage was concrete-lined and remarkably dry, with electric lights that remained dark due to the power outage. Their flashlights revealed a descending staircase that appeared to lead deep into the foundation of the dam itself. The air grew cooler as they descended, carrying a faint hum that seemed to vibrate through the concrete walls around them. After 20 steps, the staircase opened into a small antechamber with another door, this one more sophisticated than the first, with what appeared to be a biometric scanner beside it. "How are we supposed to get past this?" Olivia wondered. Aloud, her flashlight illuminating a device that clearly required fingerprint or retinal identification. Lily examined the scanner with the matter-of-fact curiosity she applied to all new discoveries. Maybe it's programmed for family? Like in spy movies? The suggestion seemed far-fetched, but as Olivia inspected the device more closely, she noticed a small engraved plate beneath it with another message from Thomas. "Blood will open the way." "He can't be serious," Olivia muttered, but something about Thomas's methodical nature and the careful planning evident in everything they'd discovered so far made her reconsider. He knew his property would go to family. With a deep breath, Olivia pressed her thumb against the scanner. For a moment, nothing happened, but then a soft hum emanated from the device, followed by a series of clicks as the locking mechanism disengaged. "That's so cool," Lily whispered, her eyes wide with amazement. Uncle Thomas must have been really smart to set this up. The inner door swung open to reveal a space that defied all expectations. Unlike the utilitarian passages that had led to it, Thomas's vault was a state-of-the-art research facility that appeared to have been actively maintained until very recently. Emergency lighting powered by an independent source illuminated a large circular room filled with technical equipment, engineering models, and walls lined with filing cabinets and glass display cases. "What is this place?" Lily asked, her voice hushed with awe as she took in the sophisticated laboratory hidden beneath the seemingly abandoned dam. "I think this is where Uncle Thomas did his real work," Olivia replied, equally stunned by the contrast between the crumbling dam above and the cutting-edge facility below. The center of the room featured a large circular table with detailed scale models of hydroelectric systems, unlike any Olivia had seen before. The designs were elegant and innovative, featuring components that seemed to defy conventional engineering approaches. Surrounding the table were workstations with advanced computer systems, testing equipment, and prototype components in various stages of development. But it was the glass display cases lining the walls that drew Olivia's attention. Each contained carefully preserved patent documents, technical diagrams, and prototype models for what appeared to be revolutionary hydroelectric technologies. The patents were meticulously organized by date, with the earliest from the 1980s. and the most recent dated just 6 months before Thomas's death. "Mom, look at this," Lily called, standing before a framed letter that hung prominently on one wall. The letter, printed on Western Power Company letterhead and dated 1992, was a rejection of Thomas's proposed hydroelectric system. "While your designs show remarkable theoretical efficiency," the letter read, "the costs of implementation would be prohibitive, and the technology remains unproven at scale. Western Power has decided to decommission the Clearwater Dam project entirely rather than pursue your experimental approach." Beside the rejection letter hung Thomas's response, never sent but carefully preserved as if to document his position. "For future generations, your short-sighted focus on quarterly profits blinds you to the long-term potential of sustainable energy solutions. These technologies will revolutionize hydroelectric power generation when the world is finally ready for them." Olivia moved from display to display, gradually piecing together the story that Thomas had preserved in his underground vault. Her uncle had been decades ahead of his time, developing hydroelectric technologies that prioritized environmental sustainability, miniaturization, and exponentially greater efficiency than conventional systems. His patents covered everything from microscale turbine designs to revolutionary water flow management systems that could generate substantial power from even minimal water movement. He was an inventor, Olivia said, the realization dawning that she had inherited far more than a dilapidated dam and rural property, a brilliant one. "And nobody knew?" Lily asked, examining a model of what appeared to be a revolutionary turbine design that could operate effectively in extremely low-flow conditions. "I think that was by design," Olivia replied, discovering a journal that documented Thomas's growing disillusionment with corporate energy interests. According to this, he believed that energy companies were actively suppressing technologies that threatened their existing business models. The journal detailed Thomas's decision to continue his research independently after Western Power abandoned the dam project. Using the settlement money from his termination agreement, he had purchased the property, converted the dam's base into a secret research facility, and spent the next 30 years perfecting technologies that energy companies had deemed too revolutionary to pursue. "Listen to this entry from 2010, Olivia read aloud. "Today's breakthrough confirms what I've suspected for years. The microvortex turbine can achieve 300% greater efficiency than any current market technology while requiring only 15% of the water flow. The implications for sustainable energy are staggering. But timing is everything. Releasing this technology now would only result in patent theft or suppression. I'll continue refining and documenting for whoever comes after me when the world is finally ready for truly sustainable energy." As Olivia explored further, she discovered documentation that transformed her understanding of her inheritance. Thomas had not only developed revolutionary technologies, he had patented them extensively, creating a portfolio of intellectual property that energy experts would consider priceless in the current climate-conscious market. A folder marked "Valuation" contained a detailed analysis of the patent portfolio's potential worth, with conservative estimates ranging from $150 to $200 million, if commercialized with the right partners. Thomas had even prepared a list of potential allies: universities, progressive energy companies, and environmental organizations that might help bring his technologies to market while honoring their sustainable intent. "Mom," Lily called from across the room, where she had discovered what appeared to be a recent addition to the vault. "I think this is for you." The envelope bore Olivia's name in Thomas's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just weeks before his death. "Dear Olivia, if you're reading this, I've moved on, and you've inherited not just a broken dam, but the work of my lifetime. I've watched your journey from afar, your dedication to Lily, your resilience in the face of challenges, your unwavering commitment to doing what's right regardless of personal cost. These are the qualities needed by whoever would continue my work. What you've discovered is more than just intellectual property. It's a vision for energy production that could transform how humanity generates power while minimizing environmental impact. The patents alone are worth millions, but their true value lies in how they're implemented. The energy industry will not welcome these innovations. Powerful interests prefer the status quo, and truly disruptive technologies face resistance, suppression, or theft. That's why I've worked in secret, waiting for the right person and the right moment. You now face a choice that will determine whether these technologies reach their potential or become another suppressed innovation. Professor Daniel Mitchell at Montana State University is one of the few people who understands the significance of this work. He can help navigate the challenges ahead if you choose to bring these technologies to light. Whatever you decide, know that I believe in your judgment. These patents represent my life's work, but they're now yours to protect, develop, or release as you see fit. I trust you to make choices based not just on profit, but on purpose. Your Uncle Thomas. Olivia sat heavily in Thomas's desk chair, the weight of his trust overwhelming in the quiet of the underground vault. She had come to Montana seeking only a fresh start and financial stability, but had inherited responsibility for technologies that could potentially transform global energy production. "What are we going to do?" Lily asked, sensing the magnitude of their discovery. "I'm not sure yet," Olivia replied honestly. "But I think we need to talk to Professor Mitchell." As they prepared to leave the vault, Olivia noticed a sophisticated security system near the entrance: cameras, motion sensors, and what appeared to be a remote monitoring setup that had been active until very recently. He wasn't just preserving his work, Olivia realized, examining the security logs that showed regular monitoring of the vault entrance. He was protecting it from people who might want to steal or suppress it. The implications sent a chill through Olivia. If Thomas's technologies were as revolutionary as they appeared, and if corporate interests had previously rejected them to protect existing business models, then her inheritance included not just valuable patents, but also the attention of powerful people who might prefer those innovations remain buried beneath a forgotten dam. The storm had passed by the time they emerged from the vault, leaving behind a clear night sky filled with stars that seemed close enough to touch in the crisp Montana air. Olivia secured the vault door, returning the key to its hidden compartment with a new appreciation for Thomas's caution. "We need to be careful about who we tell," she said as they walked back toward the house. "At least until we understand exactly what we're dealing with." Lily nodded with unexpected seriousness, like Uncle Thomas was. Secret inventors have to be careful. The next morning brought practical challenges that temporarily overshadowed their extraordinary discovery. The power remained out throughout the valley, leaving them to navigate daily routines without electricity. Lily's arthritis was flaring after their adventure in the damp vault, requiring careful management of her medication schedule and gentle exercises to maintain joint mobility. Olivia used the landline phone, which continued to function despite the power outage, to contact Professor Daniel Mitchell at Montana State University. The department secretary initially seemed skeptical about connecting her with the distinguished professor, but the mention of Thomas Reynolds resulted in an immediate change of tone. "Professor Mitchell has been expecting your call," the secretary said, her voice carrying newfound respect. "He asked to be notified immediately if anyone reached out regarding Thomas's work." Daniel Mitchell's voice carried the precise diction and measured pace of someone accustomed to explaining complex concepts. "Ms. Reynolds, I'm very sorry about Thomas's passing. He was a remarkable engineer and a dear friend, though he shared that friendship with very few people." "You knew about his work?" Olivia asked, still processing the discovery that her reclusive uncle had maintained any professional connections. "I'm one of the few who did," Mitchell confirmed. "Thomas and I were colleagues at Western Power before they shut down the Clearwater project. I recognized the potential in his designs, even when the company rejected them. We've stayed in contact throughout his independent research phase. So you know about the vault? There's a pause before Mitchell responded. Yes, I've visited his research facility several times over the years. Thomas was justifiably cautious about who he allowed to see his work, but he trusted me to understand its significance without exploiting it. May I ask how much you've discovered? Olivia described their exploration of the vault and the extensive patent documentation they had found. She mentioned the security systems, Thomas's journal entries about corporate suppression of innovation, and his letter entrusting her with decisions about how to proceed. Thomas chose his heir carefully, Mitchell said when she had finished. He never mentioned family to most people, but he spoke of you several times in recent years. He believed you possessed the integrity necessary to make difficult decisions about technologies that could disrupt very powerful industries. He barely knew me, Olivia replied, still puzzled by Thomas's confidence in her suitability for such responsibility. Thomas was an excellent judge of character, and he had access to more information about your life than you might realize. Mitchell said, he followed your nursing career, your approach to Lily's medical challenges, your resilience after your divorce. He saw qualities that convinced him you would prioritize the greater good over personal gain. The power returned that afternoon, bringing with it the hum of normalcy as appliances resumed their functions and electric lights replaced candles. But Olivia's sense of her place in the world had been fundamentally altered by what she had discovered beneath Thomas's dam. That evening, as Lily slept peacefully in her new bedroom, Olivia sat on Thomas's porch with her uncle's journal, reading the detailed documentation of his decades-long journey to create sustainable energy technologies. His earliest entries reflected optimism about working within the system, gradually giving way to disillusionment as corporate interests repeatedly prioritized existing profit models over innovation. An entry from 2005 particularly resonated. The tragedy of innovation is not that revolutionary ideas are rare, it's that they're routinely sacrificed to protect established interests. True breakthroughs don't just face technical challenges. They face resistance from entire industries built on maintaining the status quo. The inventor's greatest obstacle isn't solving the engineering problem, but overcoming the systemic resistance to meaningful change. As Olivia read deeper into Thomas's experiences, she began to understand the weight of responsibility he had placed on her shoulders. The patents in the vault weren't simply valuable intellectual property. They represented a vision for energy production that powerful interests might actively work to suppress. Her phone rang, interrupting her reading. The caller ID showed Sarah Jackson from the general store, calling at an unusually late hour. Olivia, Sarah said without preamble, there were people asking about you and the dam today. Men in suits who claimed to be from Western Power, saying they needed to inspect the property for safety concerns. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool Montana evening. What did you tell them? That they'd need to contact you directly as the property owner, Sarah replied. But something felt off. Western Power hasn't shown any interest in that dam for 30 years, and suddenly they're concerned about safety inspections? Did they say anything else? They asked about Thomas's research, whether he'd left any technical documents or patents. Said it was company property they needed to recover. Sarah's voice lowered. Olivia, people around here respected Thomas's privacy. Nobody talked about his work because he never did. These men knew things, specific details about projects Thomas worked on decades ago. It didn't sound like general knowledge. Thank you for letting me know, Olivia said, trying to keep her voice calm while her mind raced through implications. After hanging up, Olivia immediately called Professor Mitchell, despite the late hour. He answered on the second ring, as if he'd been expecting her call. Western Power representatives were in town today, asking about Thomas's research. She said without preamble. That was fast, Mitchell replied. his tone unsurprised but concerned. Thomas anticipated this. The moment probate proceedings identified you as his heir, certain people would begin monitoring the situation. But how would they know about the vault or the patents? They don't know specifics, but they know Thomas continued his research after leaving the company. His former supervisors have been waiting 30 years to discover what he developed independently. Mitchell paused. Olivia, Thomas's final patents represent billions in potential market value if properly implemented. More importantly, they threaten existing infrastructure that represents trillions in sunk costs for energy companies. There are people who would go to extraordinary lengths to control or suppress those innovations. What should I do? Thomas prepared for this moment, Mitchell said. In his office desk, middle drawer, there's a false bottom. You'll find instructions there for securing the patents and research through channels that can't be easily suppressed. Olivia found the hidden compartment exactly where Mitchell had indicated. Inside was a sealed envelope containing detailed instructions for creating secure digital copies of all patent documentation and research materials, along with contact information for trusted attorneys specializing in intellectual property protection. Thomas had created a dead man switch, a system designed to release his research to multiple universities, environmental organizations, and progressive energy startups simultaneously if anyone attempted to seize or suppress his work. The switch could be activated by Olivia as his designated successor, ensuring that no single entity could gain exclusive control of the technologies. As she read through Thomas's careful contingency plans, Olivia realized that her reclusive uncle had spent decades not just developing revolutionary technologies, but also creating systems to protect them from the very forces that had rejected his innovations in the first place. She was now the guardian of not just valuable patents, but a vision for sustainable energy that could transform how humanity generated power if she could navigate the powerful interests that would prefer. Those innovations remain submerged beneath a forgotten dam in Montana. The vault beneath the broken dam contained technologies worth $200 million in patent value alone, but their true worth in transforming energy production was incalculable. And Olivia Reynolds, a divorced mother who had come to Montana seeking only stability for her daughter, now held the keys to both the vault and the future Thomas had envisioned. As she looked out over the valley where her uncle had spent decades working in secret to create technologies the world desperately needed, but powerful interests actively resisted, Olivia made her decision. She would honor Thomas's trust by ensuring his life's work served its intended purpose, not maximizing profit, but transforming humanity's relationship with energy production. The broken dam had exposed more than just Thomas's hidden vault. It had revealed a choice about what kind of world Lily would inherit. Olivia intended to make sure it was the world Thomas had worked so tirelessly to create. The next morning dawned with a clarity that seemed at odds with the growing complications of Olivia's situation. Following Thomas's instructions, she had spent most of the night photographing patent documents, technical diagrams, and research journals. Using the surprisingly advanced computer system in Thomas's office, she had encrypted the files and transferred them to secure servers specified in his contingency plans. "Mom, there's a car coming," Lily called from the front window, interrupting Olivia's hasty breakfast. The black SUV moving slowly up their gravel driveway bore no identifying markings, but its purposeful approach carried unmistakable intent. "Remember what we talked about," Olivia said, quickly wiping Lily's breakfast dishes from the table. "No mentioning the vault or Uncle Thomas's inventions." Lily nodded solemnly. At 9 years old, she had already demonstrated a remarkable ability to understand complex situations, her experiences with chronic illness having taught her that adults sometimes needed to be carefully managed. The knock on the door was firm, authoritative, without being aggressive. Olivia opened it to find a man and woman in business attire, their expressions professionally neutral, but their posture conveying a sense of purpose that transcended ordinary. Social calls. Ms. Reynolds? I'm David Carpenter, Director of Legacy Assets for Western Power. This is my colleague, Amanda Lewis from our legal department. We were hoping to speak with you about some technical materials that may have been left in Thomas Reynolds' possession. Olivia maintained her expression of polite confusion. Technical materials? Engineering designs, patent documentation, research journals. Carpenter clarified, his tone suggesting this was a routine inquiry despite the unusual circumstances. When your uncle worked for Western Power, he developed various proprietary technologies that technically remain company property. I wasn't aware of any professional connection between my uncle and Western Power, Olivia replied, channeling the genuine ignorance she would have felt just 2 days earlier. I've only started going through his personal effects. Amanda Lewis stepped forward slightly, her legal training evident in her precise language. We understand this is a difficult time, having just lost a family member. We're simply trying to recover company intellectual property that should have been returned when Thomas left Western Power's employment. I see, Olivia said. Would you have documentation showing exactly what materials belong to the company? Inventories, contracts, anything specific? The question clearly caught them off guard. Carpenter adjusted his tie slightly. The situation is somewhat complex. Thomas was involved in experimental designs that weren't fully documented in official records. We're particularly interested in his work on microturbine technology and vortex energy capture systems. The specific mention of technologies that matched Thomas's most valuable patents confirmed Olivia's suspicions. These weren't company representatives conducting routine recovery of corporate property. They were fishing for information about innovations developed years after Thomas had left Western Power. I haven't come across anything like that, Olivia replied truthfully, having secured the documents hours earlier. Mostly just personal correspondence and household records so far. Lewis produced a business card. If you do discover any technical materials, we'd appreciate if you'd contact us immediately. Western Power is prepared to offer reasonable compensation for the return of any proprietary research. Of course, Olivia agreed, accepting the card with appropriate politeness. Though I'm not sure what would qualify as reasonable compensation for something I know nothing about. We could start discussions at, say, $50,000 for a complete set of Thomas's technical documentation, Carpenter offered, watching carefully for her reaction. As a gesture of goodwill, Olivia kept her expression neutral, though internally she reeled at the gulf between their offer and the $200 million valuation in Thomas's records. That's generous for materials that might just be old work files. We value our former employees' contributions, Carpenter replied smoothly. One more thing, we'd like to schedule a safety inspection of the dam. As the original builders, Western Power maintains certain liability concerns, even though the property was sold to your uncle. I'll have to check my schedule, Olivia said. I'm still settling in, and Lily has medical appointments in Bozeman later this week. We wouldn't need to disturb you, Lewis interjected. Our engineers could conduct their inspection while you're away. The suggestion that they should have unsupervised access to the property where Thomas's vault was hidden sent warning signals through Olivia's mind. I'd prefer to be present for any inspections. The property is still new to me, and I'd like to understand any safety concerns firsthand. After the Western Power representatives departed with promises to call soon about scheduling the inspection, Olivia watched through the window as they sat in their vehicle for several minutes, apparently making calls before finally driving away. They want Uncle Thomas's inventions, don't they? Lily asked, her perceptiveness once again catching Olivia by surprise. Yes, sweetheart, they do. Olivia knelt to meet her daughter's eyes. But they don't know exactly what he invented or where he kept his work. They're hoping we'll lead them to it. Are they bad people? Olivia considered the question carefully. I don't think they're bad people, exactly. They work for a company that makes money from old ways of producing energy. Uncle Thomas created new ways that might be better for the environment, but would make their old systems less valuable. So they want to stop his inventions from being used or control them, so they can decide when and how they're introduced, Olivia explained. Uncle Thomas believed everyone should benefit from cleaner energy, not just big companies. Olivia's phone rang Professor Mitchell, calling with a timing that suggested he somehow knew about their visitors. "They've made contact already," Mitchell said when Olivia described the morning's visitors. "Faster than I expected. What did they offer?" $50,000 for all of Thomas's technical documentation. Mitchell's laugh carried no humor. Less than 1/4% of the portfolio's value. They're testing to see if you understand what you've inherited. They also want to inspect the dam while we're away, Olivia added. Of course. They do. They suspect the vault exists but don't know its location. A safety inspection gives them perfect cover to search the property. Mitchell's tone became more urgent. "Olivia, we need to move faster than I initially thought. Can you come to Bozeman today? Bring the primary patent documentation and research journals. We need to secure physical copies before they find a way to access the property." "I can't." "Just leave," Olivia protested. "They might be watching the house." "They almost certainly are," Mitchell agreed. "Which is why we need a diversion. I have former students who can help create a plausible reason for you to visit Bozeman with documents in hand." 2 hours later, Olivia was packing the car with Lily's medical supplies and overnight bags when a Montana State University vehicle pulled into their driveway. A young woman in university attire approached with clipboard in hand. "Ms. Reynolds? I'm Kate Wilson from Montana State's Rural Health Initiative. Professor Mitchell mentioned you have a daughter with juvenile arthritis who needs to establish care with our specialists. I'm here to help coordinate your introduction to our pediatric rheumatology team." The performance was flawless, professional, detailed, and entirely convincing to anyone who might be observing. Kate helped load additional bags into Olivia's car, casually including a secure document case containing the most critical patent materials. "We're being watched from the South Ridge," Kate murmured while appearing to review medical forms with Olivia. "Black SUV, 2 occupants. They've been there since before I arrived. Western Power or private security they've hired. Either way, they're about to follow a very convincing medical visit to Bozeman, while the actual patent documentation takes a different route." Kate's plan became clear when they reached the main road. 2 identical university vehicles waited at the intersection, each heading in different directions. As Kate departed in one with a decoy document case, clearly visible on her passenger seat, Olivia and Lily took the main highway toward Bozeman. "It's like we're spies," Lily whispered, her eyes wide with excitement rather than fear. "Uncle Thomas would have loved this." Olivia managed a smile despite her growing anxiety. "I think you're right. He spent decades protecting these inventions." The pediatric rheumatology appointment at Montana State University's Medical Center was not merely a cover story Lily genuinely needed to establish care with new specialists. While Lily underwent her evaluation, Olivia met Professor Mitchell in a secure conference room in the engineering building. Mitchell was older than Olivia had imagined from their phone conversations, in his late 60s with silver hair and the kind of calm confidence that came from decades of academic respect. He examined Thomas's documentation with reverent care, occasionally murmuring an appreciation at particularly innovative designs. "Your uncle was a genius," Mitchell said finally, looking up from a detailed schematic of Thomas's microvortex turbine system. "These designs are decades ahead of current commercial technology. His breakthrough in low-flow energy capture alone could transform how we approach hydroelectric power in environmentally sensitive watersheds." "And Western Power wants to bury them," Olivia said, "or control their release to protect existing infrastructure investments," Mitchell clarified. Energy companies aren't villains in a simple sense. They're massive systems with tremendous inertia. Thomas's innovations represent a threat to billions in existing assets that would become obsolete if his technologies were widely implemented. So what do we do? Mitchell gestured to the team of graduate students and fellow professors who were carefully scanning and documenting each page of Thomas's research. First, we create secure, authenticated copies that can be verified by independent experts. Then we implement Thomas's deadman switch distributing key patents to multiple independent entities who can protect and develop them cooperatively rather than competitively. And if Western power tries to claim ownership? Thomas anticipated that too, Mitchell explained, producing a folder of legal documents. These are copies of his employment contract with Western Power, along with his resignation agreement. He negotiated specific language that limited the company's claims to technologies developed during his employment. Anything created after his departure belongs solely to him, and now to you. By evening, the documentation process was complete. Thomas's most critical patents and research materials had been secured in the university's archive system, with additional copies entrusted to Mitchell's colleagues at 3 other universities. The physical originals would remain in a secure location at Montana State until proper legal protections could be established. As Olivia and Lily prepared to return to Clearwater Valley, Mitchell offered a final warning. Western Power will escalate when they realize you're not cooperating. They might offer more money, they might threaten legal action, or they might attempt to access the vault directly. Thomas believed the risk was worth taking because his technologies could help solve our energy crisis without further damaging the environment. He trusted me to make the right decision, Olivia said. I need to honor that trust. The drive back to Clearwater Valley took them through Montana's spectacular landscape as the setting sun painted the mountains in gold and amber. Lily had fallen asleep in the backseat, exhausted from her medical evaluations, but with a treatment plan that provided new hope for managing her condition. Olivia's mind raced with plans and contingencies. Thomas had spent decades protecting his innovations. Now that responsibility had fallen to her, the weight of it should have felt overwhelming. But instead, it created a strange sense of clarity. For years, her life had been defined by reaction responding to her divorce, to Lily's diagnosis, to financial pressures that limited their choices. Now she was making active decisions that could affect far more than just her small family. As they turned onto the gravel road leading to Thomas's property, Olivia immediately sensed something was wrong. Lights blazed from windows that should have been dark, and unfamiliar vehicles were parked near the house. Stopping at a distance, Olivia called Professor Mitchell. Someone's at the house. Multiple vehicles. Western Power isn't waiting for permission, Mitchell replied grimly. They're searching for the vault. Is Lily with you? Yes, she's asleep in the back. Drive to Sarah Jackson's store. She's part of Thomas's local support network, one of the few people who knew to watch for suspicious activity around his property. She'll help you while I contact our legal team. Sarah welcomed them without questions, settling Lily in a comfortable guest room above the general store while providing Olivia with a secure landline to call Mitchell's attorneys. By morning, the legal response was in motion: court orders prohibiting Western Power from accessing the Reynolds property without owner permission, along with formal notices asserting Olivia's ownership of all intellectual property developed by Thomas after his employment ended. But when Olivia returned to the property, escorted by the local sheriff and Mitchell's attorneys, they found evidence of a sophisticated search operation. Equipment had been brought in to scan the dam structure and areas near the hidden vault. Entrance showed signs of exploratory excavation. They were looking for hidden spaces, the attorney observed, photographing the disturbance for court filings. But it doesn't appear they found the actual vault entrance. The sheriff, a taciturn woman who had apparently respected Thomas's privacy during his lifetime, examined the damaged areas with professional thoroughness. This goes beyond trespassing into criminal damage of property and attempted theft. I can file charges if you want to pursue them. The confrontation escalated quickly. By afternoon, Western Power's legal team had arrived in Clearwater Valley, armed with documents claiming that Thomas's work remained company property under broad intellectual property clauses in his original employment contract. Mitchell's attorneys countered with Thomas's carefully negotiated resignation agreement that specifically limited such claims. David Carpenter reappeared, this time with senior Western Power executives and a new approach. "Ms. Reynolds, we recognize that this situation has been handled poorly," he said during an impromptu meeting at the sheriff's office. "Western Power is prepared to offer $5 million for all technical documentation and patent rights developed by Thomas Reynolds, along with exclusive access to the research facility on your property. They offer 100 times their initial proposal, but still just 2.5% of the portfolio's actual value revealed both their desperation and their continued underestimation of what Thomas had actually accomplished. "Mr. Carpenter," Olivia replied with calm she didn't entirely feel, "my uncle spent decades developing technologies that could transform how we generate clean energy. He believed these innovations should benefit humanity, not just shareholders. I intend to honor his vision." Ms. Reynolds, the most senior executive, intervened. "You're facing a corporation with virtually unlimited legal resources. This will become a protracted court battle that could take years to resolve, during which time you'll have no ability to commercialize or benefit from these patents. $5 million today represents certainty versus years of legal limbo." Olivia felt a moment of doubt. $5 million would secure Lily's medical care for life, allow them to live comfortably, and eliminate the financial stresses that had dominated her existence for years. The alternative was an uncertain legal battle against a corporate giant with every incentive to bury Thomas's innovations. But then she remembered Thomas's journal entries describing decades of solitary work, driven by a vision of truly sustainable energy. She thought of his letter entrusting her with his life's work because he believed she would prioritize purpose over profit. And she considered the world Lily would inherit, one increasingly threatened by climate change that Thomas's technologies might help address. "Your offer is declined," Olivia said simply. "And be advised that as of this morning, Thomas's most significant patents have been securely documented by independent experts at 4 major universities. Even if you tie me up in court for years, his innovations will eventually reach the public." The revelation that Thomas's documentation had already been secured by academic institutions clearly caught the executives off guard. Their legal strategy had apparently assumed they were dealing with an isolated heir who could be pressured or outmaneuvered before outside experts became involved. That evening, as news of the confrontation spread through Clearwater Valley, Olivia received unexpected visitors. Local residents began arriving at Thomas's house, bringing food, offering support, and sharing stories about her uncle that revealed a man who had been far less reclusive than his reputation suggested. "Thomas helped rebuild my barn after the '98 floods," one farmer explained. "Never wanted payment, just asked that I consider installing a small turbine in the creek running through my property. Said he wanted to test some ideas. He redesigned the water system for the elementary school," another resident added. "Cut their energy costs by 60% with some contraption he installed in the supply lines. The school board thought he was a bit odd, but no one argued with the savings." Sarah Jackson arrived with a large box of documents. "Thomas asked me to keep these safe records of all the small-scale implementations of his technologies around the valley. He was using our community as a living laboratory, installing prototype systems in streams, irrigation channels, even municipal water pipes. Most folks didn't understand exactly what he was doing, but they trusted him. Olivia examined the documentation with growing amazement. While maintaining his reclusive reputation, Thomas had actually created a valley-wide demonstration project. For his technologies, dozens of his microturbine systems were operating throughout the community, generating clean electricity from water flows that conventional hydroelectric approaches would consider too small to utilize. He was proving his concepts worked in real-world conditions, Professor Mitchell observed when Olivia called to share this discovery. Creating performance data that would make his patents virtually unassailable. Brilliant. The community's support transformed Olivia's understanding of her situation. She wasn't a lone inheritor facing a corporate giant. She was the newest member of a community that had been quietly participating in Thomas's vision for years, often without fully understanding the significance of their contribution. When Western Power's executives returned the next day with an increased offer of $10 million, Olivia met them on the porch of Thomas's house, surrounded by community members whose properties hosted his experimental systems. "Your company abandoned this dam 30 years ago because you couldn't envision its potential," Olivia told them. "My uncle saw possibilities you missed, and he spent decades developing technologies that could transform energy production while minimizing environmental impact. Those innovations don't belong to Western Power, they belong to the future." As the executives departed, their expressions reflected the recognition that they had lost control of Thomas's innovations. The patents were secured, the community was mobilized, and the narrative was shifting from corporate property disputes to visionary inventor versus entrenched industry interests. That night, as Lily slept peacefully upstairs, Olivia sat on Thomas's porch with Sarah Jackson and several other community members who had been part of her uncle's quiet support network for decades. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked. "Western Power won't give up easily." Olivia looked out over the valley where Thomas had implemented his vision, one small installation at a time, building a living testament to the possibilities of sustainable energy. "I'm going to finish what Thomas started," she said, the clarity of purpose feeling like a gift amid the chaos of recent days. Not by selling his patents to the highest bidder, but by creating a collaborative model for implementing them in communities that need affordable, sustainable energy. The broken dam that had exposed Thomas's hidden vault had also revealed a choice about what kind of world Lily would inherit. Olivia intended to make sure it was the world Thomas had worked so tirelessly to create, one where revolutionary ideas weren't suppressed to protect the status quo, but embraced as pathways to a more sustainable future. As the Montana night deepened around them, Olivia realized that Thomas had left her far more than patents worth $200 million. He had bequeathed her purpose, a mission worthy of the courage and determination she had developed through years of overcoming personal challenges. The divorced nurse who had come to Montana, seeking only stability, had found instead a calling that might help transform how humanity generated power for generations to come. The vault beneath the broken dam contained Thomas's vision for the future. Olivia Reynolds was now its guardian, not just protecting his innovations from those who would suppress them, but championing their implementation in a world that desperately needed sustainable solutions. The challenge ahead was daunting, but for the first time in years, Olivia felt equal to it, empowered by Thomas's trust, supported by an unexpected community, and inspired by the opportunity to create meaningful change in the world her daughter would inherit. The autumn leaves blazed in vibrant hues across Clearwater Valley as Olivia stood on the catwalk spanning the top of Thomas's dam, watching construction crews repair the structural damage that had exposed his hidden vault 3 months earlier. The decision to restore the dam rather than remove it had been controversial among environmental groups until Olivia had revealed Thomas's comprehensive redesign, revolutionary system that would generate clean energy while actually improving water flow, fish migration, and riparian habitats. "Mom, Professor Mitchell is here." Lily called from below, waving excitedly beside the distinguished academic whose silver hair caught the morning sunlight. In the months since discovering Thomas's innovations, Lily had developed an unexpected bond with the professor, her natural curiosity about her great-uncle's work finding perfect resonance in Mitchell's patient explanations of complex engineering concepts. Olivia descended from the catwalk to join them, noting how much stronger Lily looked these days. The combination of reduced stress, increased outdoor activity, and a cutting-edge treatment protocol developed at Montana State had dramatically improved her arthritis symptoms. The little girl who had once been confined by pain now moved with the freedom of childhood, her medical challenges still present, but no longer defining her existence. "The consortium representatives arrive this afternoon," Mitchell said, glancing at his watch. "Are you ready for this?" Olivia took a deep breath, absorbing the magnitude of what they were about to undertake. "As ready as I'll ever be to tell a room full of energy executives and environmental leaders that my uncle's technology could make both their business models and their opposition strategies obsolete." The months following Western Power's attempted acquisition of Thomas's patents had been a whirlwind of legal maneuvers, media attention, and strategic planning. When corporate pressure and legal threats failed to secure Thomas's innovations, Western Power had shifted to a multi-pronged approach attempting to invalidate his patents while simultaneously offering increasingly large sums for exclusive licensing rights. But Olivia had refused to be intimidated or bought off. Working with Professor Mitchell and a growing team of allies, she had instead developed a radical alternative to conventional technology licensing. Today's meeting would determine whether that vision could become reality. "Remember," Mitchell said as they walked toward the newly renovated barn that now served as the headquarters for what they were calling the Reynolds Institute for Sustainable Energy, "you're negotiating from a position of strength. Every technical assessment has confirmed that Thomas's technologies represent generational breakthroughs in hydroelectric efficiency and environmental integration." "It's not the technology I'm worried about," Olivia admitted. "It's convincing traditional opponents to collaborate rather than compete." The barn's exterior maintained its rustic appearance, honoring Thomas's preference for unassuming facades that concealed revolutionary content. The interior, however, had been transformed into a state-of-the-art research and demonstration facility. The main floor featured working models of Thomas's key innovations, while the upper level housed offices, conference rooms, and educational spaces where visiting engineers and students could study his approaches. Sarah Jackson was already there, organizing refreshments for the afternoon meeting with the practical efficiency that had made her an invaluable ally in Olivia's efforts to implement Thomas's vision. In the months since the confrontation with Western Power, Sarah had emerged as the Reynolds Institute's operations director, her intimate knowledge of the community and its needs providing crucial context for implementation planning. "Nervous?" Sarah asked, noting Olivia's tension as she arranged documents for the presentation. "Terrified," Olivia admitted. 3 months ago, I was a nurse trying to make ends meet. Today I'm about to propose a complete reimagining of how we develop and deploy energy technology." Sarah squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "That's exactly why you'll succeed. You're not another profit-motivated executive or ideology-driven activist. You're someone who understands what these technologies could mean for real communities and families." By early afternoon, vehicles began arriving, sleek corporate cars carrying energy industry executives, practical hybrid SUVs transporting environmental organization leaders, and government fleet vehicles bringing regulatory officials curious about technologies that promise to transcend the traditional battles between industry and environmentalists. Olivia watched through the window as the unlikely allies and traditional adversaries emerged from their vehicles, eyeing each other with the wary recognition of people accustomed to meeting in courtrooms and confrontational public hearings rather than collaborative discussions. They all think they're here to negotiate exclusive access or preferential terms, Mitchell observed. None of them understand what you're actually proposing. That's the point, Olivia replied. Thomas believed the old models of proprietary technology development were part of the problem. Today we're offering them something completely different. As the diverse group settled into the conference room, Olivia felt a moment of doubt. Among the attendees were CEOs with decades of industry experience, environmental leaders with advanced degrees in ecology and public policy, and government officials whose decisions affected energy regulations across multiple states. By comparison, her nursing credentials and recent immersion in Thomas's work seemed woefully inadequate preparation for leading such a consequential discussion. But then Lily appeared at her side, slipping her small hand into Olivia's with a confidence that communicated more than words could express. The gesture reminded Olivia why Thomas had entrusted her with his life's work, not because of specialized credentials, but because of the courage and integrity she had demonstrated in facing life's challenges. "Thank you all for coming," Olivia began, her voice finding strength as she focused on the purpose that had gradually crystallized over the past months. 3 months ago, I inherited what appeared to be a broken dam and a rundown property. What I actually received was a vision for transforming how we generate and distribute clean energy. She activated the presentation screen, displaying the first of Thomas's breakthrough designs, a micro-vortex turbine system, capable of generating significant power from water flows too small for conventional hydroelectric approaches. My uncle Thomas Reynolds spent 30 years developing technologies that challenge our fundamental assumptions about hydroelectric power. His innovations don't just incrementally improve existing approaches, they reimagine the relationship between energy generation and the natural environment. For the next 30 minutes, Olivia guided the group through Thomas's key innovations, supported by Professor Mitchell's technical expertise and data from the existing installations throughout Clearwater Valley. The presentation demonstrated how Thomas's systems could generate clean electricity from sources as diverse as municipal water pipes, irrigation channels, and natural streams without disrupting ecological functions or requiring large-scale environmental modifications. The patent portfolio you've been competing to control is conservatively valued at $200 million, Olivia continued, watching as the executives calculated potential returns in their heads. But Thomas believed its true value couldn't be measured in licensing fees or quarterly profits. He envisioned these technologies serving communities that have been overlooked by traditional energy development, rural areas, developing regions, and neighborhoods struggling with energy poverty. She paused, noting the mix of confusion and interest her statement had generated. "That's why I've invited you here today, not to negotiate exclusive licensing agreements or competitive bids, but to propose a completely different approach to technology deployment." Olivia unveiled the Reynolds Collaborative Implementation model, a framework for shared development and deployment of Thomas's technologies that transcended traditional competitive boundaries. Rather than selling exclusive rights to the highest bidder, she proposed creating a consortium where energy companies, environmental organizations, academic institutions, and community representatives would collaboratively implement the technologies, while sharing both costs and benefits. "This is unprecedented," the Western Power CEO objected, breaking the stunned silence that followed her proposal. "You're asking competitors to collaborate on deploying proprietary technology without exclusive market advantages. It contradicts every standard business model in our industry." "Exactly," Olivia acknowledged. "Standard business models have given us energy systems that prioritize short-term profits over long-term sustainability, that concentrate benefits while distributing environmental costs, and that advance slowly when we need rapid transformation." Thomas didn't spend 30 years developing incremental improvements to a broken system. He created alternatives that require new implementation approaches. The environmental leaders appeared equally skeptical, though for different reasons. While we appreciate the ecological advantages of these technologies, one stated carefully, we have concerns about entrusting their deployment to the very corporations that have historically prioritized profit over environmental protection. Your concerns are valid, Olivia replied. That's why the collaborative model includes environmental organizations as equal partners with veto power over implementation approaches that compromise ecological values. It also requires transparent monitoring and public data sharing for all installations. For the next 2 hours, the discussion evolved from skepticism to cautious engagement as the diverse stakeholders began recognizing potential advantages in the collaborative approach. Energy companies saw opportunities to deploy revolutionary technologies without bearing the full development costs or regulatory risks. Environmental organizations recognized pathways to influence implementation priorities and ensure ecological considerations remain central. Government representatives identified potential for accelerated deployment of clean energy without the delays caused by traditional adversarial processes. As the formal meeting concluded, the attendees broke into smaller discussion groups, examining working models of Thomas's systems and engaging with the technical experts Mitchell had assembled. Olivia stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection, the autumn air crisp against her face as she contemplated the magnitude of what they were attempting. Sarah joined her on the porch, offering a cup of coffee and her practical perspective. You've given them something none of them expected, a way to transcend the battles they've been fighting for decades. Whether they'll take that opportunity is another question entirely. Thomas believed they would, Olivia replied. He understood that the traditional adversarial approach was failing everyone. Energy companies facing increasing regulatory constraints and public opposition. Environmental groups fighting defensive battles against incremental damage. Communities caught in the middle without affordable, sustainable options. And if they reject the collaborative model? Olivia watched the unlikely allies continuing. Their discussions inside the barn, traditional boundaries temporarily suspended in the exploration of new possibilities. Then we'll implement it without them, starting with communities that have been overlooked by conventional energy development. Thomas's technologies are especially valuable for distributed, small-scale applications that big energy companies consider unprofitable. The Western Power CEO approached, his expression thoughtful as he joined them on the porch. Ms. Reynolds, your proposal challenges everything about how we've developed and deployed energy technology for the past century. It's either brilliantly visionary or completely impractical. I haven't decided which. What would help you decide? Olivia asked. Proof that it can work at scale, not just in a small Montana valley, but in diverse environments with different resource constraints and regulatory frameworks. Olivia smiled. That's exactly what the first phase of the collaborative implementation plan addresses. 3 demonstration projects, 1 urban, 1 rural, 1 in a developing region, each designed to prove different aspects of both the technology and the collaborative approach. By evening, as the visitors departed with implementation proposals and technical documentation, a framework for the Reynolds Energy Consortium had begun taking shape. 6 energy companies, 4 environmental organizations, 3 research universities, and representatives from 12 communities had expressed interest in participating in the demonstration phase, with negotiations on specific terms to follow. You've accomplished more in 1 day than most energy initiatives achieve in years, Mitchell observed as they watched the last vehicles depart. Thomas would be proud. We haven't accomplished anything yet, Olivia cautioned. Interest isn't implementation. We still have to prove the collaborative model can work when real money and reputations are at stake. The following weeks brought intense negotiations as the consortium framework evolved from concept to formal agreement. Lawyers representing diverse stakeholders worked to create governance structures that balanced corporate interests with environmental values and community needs. Technical teams developed implementation plans for the demonstration projects, identifying specific sites and adaptation requirements for Thomas's core technologies. Throughout the process, Olivia maintained a clear vision of what success would look like, not just functional technology or profitable operations, but transformative systems that empowered communities while regenerating environmental health. When negotiations stalled over control issues or profit allocation, she consistently redirected attention to the shared benefits of collaborative implementation compared to traditional competitive approaches. 6 weeks after the initial meeting, representatives from 28 organizations gathered at the Reynolds Institute to sign the founding charter for what the media was already calling the most ambitious clean energy initiative of the decade. The consortium committed $75 million to implement Thomas's technologies in 7 demonstration projects across 3 continents, with provisions for rapid expansion if the initial deployments proved successful. The signing ceremony attracted national media attention, with energy analysts debating whether the collaborative model represented the future of technology deployment or an idealistic experiment doomed by market realities. Environmental publications celebrated the ecological advantages of Thomas's designs while expressing cautious optimism about corporate participation. Business journals questioned whether shareholders would tolerate the shared intellectual property approach but acknowledged the potential efficiency gains of collaborative development. As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, Olivia found herself standing between the Western Power CEO and the director of the region's most prominent environmental organization, former adversaries now publicly committing to collaborative implementation of technologies that could benefit both their constituencies. Ms. Reynolds, called a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, industry analysts estimate you could have sold exclusive rights to your uncle's patents for upwards of $100 million. Why choose this collaborative approach instead? Olivia glanced at Lily, who was proudly wearing a junior researcher badge as she explained Thomas's microturbine model to a group of visiting engineering students. Because some innovations are too important to be controlled by any single entity or deployed according to conventional profit models. My uncle developed these technologies to benefit communities and ecosystems, not just shareholders. The collaborative approach honors that intention while accelerating implementation. And you're not concerned about giving up control of your intellectual property? Asked another journalist. We're not giving up control, we're sharing it with partners who bring diverse expertise and resources to the implementation process. Thomas understood that revolutionary technologies require revolutionary deployment models. The patents are valuable, but their true worth lies in how widely and equitably they're implemented. That evening, after the media had departed and consortium representatives had returned to their respective headquarters to begin implementation planning, Olivia sat with Lily on Thomas's porch, watching the sunset paint the valley in deepening shades of amber and gold. "Mom, are we rich now?" Lily asked, the question reflecting her 9-year-old attempt to understand the day's events. Olivia considered how to explain the complex reality they now inhabited. The consortium agreement included significant funding for the Reynolds Institute, ensuring they would never again face the financial insecurity that had characterized their previous life. But they had indeed exchanged potential personal wealth for something less tangible but ultimately more valuable. "We're secure," she answered carefully. "We'll never have to worry about paying for your medical care or having a safe place to live." But we chose to share Uncle Thomas's inventions rather than selling them for the most money possible. We decided that helping more people have clean energy was more important than being super rich ourselves. Lily nodded, processing this with the straightforward wisdom that continued to surprise Olivia. "So instead of us having lots of money, lots of people will have electricity that doesn't hurt the environment?" "Exactly. I think Uncle Thomas would like that better than us being rich," Lily declared with certainty. He made all those inventions to help people, not just to make money. How do you know that? Olivia asked, curious about her daughter's confidence in assessing a great-uncle she had never met. Lily gestured toward the valley where Thomas's microturbines had been quietly generating clean electricity for years. Because he put his inventions all over town to help people, even when nobody knew what he was doing. He wanted to make things better, not just be famous or rich. The observation captured Thomas's essence with a clarity that numerous media profiles had missed. He had indeed been driven by purpose rather than recognition, spending decades developing solutions to problems most people didn't yet recognize as urgent. His patents weren't just valuable intellectual property. They were a vision for a different relationship between human energy needs and natural systems. As darkness settled over Clearwater Valley, Olivia reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with inheriting what appeared to be a broken dam and a financial burden. The vault exposed by declining water levels had contained not just valuable patents, but a purpose worthy of the courage and determination she had developed through years of personal challenges. The morning brought new momentum as consortium members began mobilizing resources for the demonstration projects. Engineers from competing companies were collaboratively adapting Thomas's designs for specific implementation sites. Environmental organizations were developing monitoring protocols to ensure ecological benefits were achieved and documented. Community representatives were identifying local workforce development opportunities associated with installation and maintenance. 6 months after discovering Thomas's hidden vault, Olivia stood at the site of the first major implementation project, a mid-sized river in an economically depressed region where conventional hydroelectric development had been blocked for decades due to environmental concerns. Thomas's microvortex system offered a third path that could generate significant power without the ecological disruption of traditional dams. As she watched teams of engineers, environmental scientists, and local workers collaboratively installing components that would generate clean electricity while actually improving fish migration and riparian habitats, Olivia felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The broken dam that had exposed Thomas's vault had also revealed her own capacity to transcend conventional thinking and create new possibilities where others saw only familiar conflicts. Professor Mitchell joined her at the Riverside observation point, his expression reflecting satisfaction at seeing theoretical innovations becoming physical reality. This installation alone will power 15,000 homes without a single negative environmental impact. When all 7 demonstration projects are operational, we'll be providing clean electricity to over 100,000 households while improving watershed health in every implementation area and creating hundreds of jobs in communities that desperately need economic opportunities, Olivia added, watching local workers learning specialized installation techniques from consortium engineers. The employment program had been her addition to Thomas's vision, ensuring that implementation created not just environmental benefits but immediate economic value for host communities. Western Power's CEO called this morning, Mitchell mentioned. Casually, their board has unanimously approved full participation in the expanded implementation phase. Apparently, their engineers are reporting that Thomas's designs are even more revolutionary than initially assessed. They're proposing to commit an additional $50 million to accelerate deployment. The news represented final validation of their approach. The energy giant that had initially attempted to suppress or control Thomas's innovations was now embracing collaborative implementation, recognizing opportunities for leadership in a transforming industry rather than desperately defending an obsolete business model. That evening, national news programs featured the successful activation of the first major Reynolds system, with environmental leaders and energy executives standing together to celebrate technologies that transcended their traditional opposition. Footage showed clear, Water flowing through structures that generated power while enhancing rather than disrupting natural processes, a visual representation of Thomas's vision for harmony between human needs and ecological health. As Olivia and Lily watched the coverage in Thomas's living room, now filled with photographs documenting their journey from uncertain inheritance to pioneering implementation, Lily looked up from her homework with a question that captured the essence of their experience. "Mom, when we first came here, we were just trying to find a better place to live, right? We didn't know about Uncle Thomas's inventions or that we would help change how people make electricity." "That's right, sweetheart. We were just looking for a fresh start." Lily considered this with the thoughtful expression that had become characteristic of her approach to life's complexities. "But finding Uncle Thomas's vault gave us something bigger to do, something that helps lots of people and the environment too." "It did," Olivia agreed, struck by her daughter's capacity to distill complex situations to their essential meaning. "It gave us purpose beyond just taking care of ourselves." "I think that's why Uncle Thomas left everything to you," Lily said. "With certainty. He knew you would be brave enough to do something big and important, even if it was scary." The observation echoed Thomas's letter, with its assessment of Olivia's character and capacity to make difficult choices based on principle rather than convenience. Somehow, a man she had barely known had recognized qualities in her that she hadn't fully acknowledged in herself: the courage to challenge entrenched systems, the integrity to prioritize purpose over profit, and the vision to imagine collaborative possibilities where others saw only competitive necessities. 1 year after inheriting what appeared to be a financial burden and outdated infrastructure, Olivia Reynolds had transformed not just her own circumstances, but the trajectory of clean energy implementation across multiple regions. The divorced nurse who had come to Montana, seeking only stability for her daughter, had become a pioneer in collaborative technology deployment, demonstrating that revolutionary innovations required revolutionary implementation approaches. The vault beneath the broken dam had contained patents worth $200 million, but their true value lay in the vision they represented: a fundamentally different relationship between human energy needs and natural systems. By honoring Thomas's intention, rather than maximizing personal gain, Olivia had ensured that his life's work would achieve its intended impact, benefiting communities and ecosystems far beyond Clearwater Valley. As the evening deepened into night, Olivia joined Lily on Thomas's porch, now their porch, watching stars emerge in the clear Montana sky. The broken dam that had initially exposed Thomas's hidden vault had been transformed into a demonstration site for his most advanced water management system, a living testament to the possibility of generating energy in ways that enhanced rather than extracted from the natural world. "Mom," Lily said as they listened to the gentle sound of water flowing through systems designed to work with nature rather than against it, "I'm glad we found Uncle Thomas's inventions, but I'm even more glad we found our purpose." Olivia hugged her daughter, marveling at the wisdom that continued to emerge from someone so young. They had indeed found more than valuable patents in the vault beneath the broken dam. They had discovered that ordinary people could make extraordinary choices when guided by courage, integrity, and a vision of possibilities beyond conventional limitations. The inheritance that had seemed like a simple opportunity for a fresh start had evolved into a legacy that would influence energy development, environmental health, and community empowerment for generations to come. Olivia Reynolds, who had sought only a place where she and Lily could build a meaningful life, had instead become a catalyst for collaborative transformation in an industry desperately needing new approaches. As moonlight silvered the valley where Thomas's vision was now taking physical form in revolutionary systems that generated power while enhancing ecological health, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude for the broken dam that had changed everything, exposing not just valuable patents, but the possibility of approaching seemingly intractable problems with the courage to imagine and implement transformative solutions. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.